This panel is really going to focus on some of the business opportunities that are available in the mobile broadband space and what companies are doing already and what they see as possibilities in the future. So what we're going to do is I'll introduce everyone real quickly, and then we're going to let them each give about a 10-minute presentation of what they do with their companies, where they see their business models going in this space. And then I'll ask a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up and hope you guys can get as many questions in as possible. So let's see here. And I apologize, I haven't actually gotten a chance to meet all of you yet. So, okay, so next to me, we have Kent Dix, who's CEO of MedApps, Inc. Next to Kent, you're Lynn. Okay, thank you. We have Lynn Armbrust from Bank of America. And I'm sorry, thanks. Sorry, I can't read their name tags from this far away. We have Ed Gray. He is Vice President of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs for Elster Solutions. And on the very end over there, we've got John Zeitler. Zeitler or Zeitler? John Zeitler, who is Executive Vice President of Zipcar. So is there anyone who would like to kick us off, or you want to just go down the line?
That suspiciously looks like the Zipcar presentation on there.
Oh, well then I guess it's you.
Okay. Is this
I think
it's on? Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here. You may. And are we just queuing the roll of the slides?
I'm not sure. Oh.
Control. You might. Your first question might be, especially if you're not as familiar with Zipcar, what is this guy doing here? Car companies, car rental companies is sort of what people initially think about when they think of us often. And so when they think of cars, you can see what has for many years passed as innovation in the car industry. And obviously this is an exaggeration. There are some very important, the catalytic converter and some of the other bells and whistles you hang off of a traditional car has been very important, but generally you're hanging stuff off the same tree. Flash forward to 2010, and more you're seeing much different innovation, much more significant innovation, and really that there are a couple ways you're seeing this. One is even the internal combustion engine is starting to be questioned. You have electric vehicles, you have other technologies. For the first time, people are really questioning what has been the basic premise of automobile transportation. But there also is questioning the very idea of car ownership. There are many new, and this is sort of interesting because it sort of goes with many new models you're starting to see around shared assets, shared resources, being more efficient around how we use resources. And there are a couple of reasons for this. I'm just going to flash forward a couple. A couple of global trends that we're lucky, I think, enough, smart and mostly lucky, I think, to be in the middle of, that are really causing this. Self-service, pay per use, you're starting to see people be more interested in that. Affordability, for obvious reasons, is more and more in the spotlight. Sustainability, as we all know, is becoming more and more of a value. City livability, smart cities, everybody's concerned about it. And then urbanization. I mean, very significantly, for the first time in history, more people are living in cities than are not living in cities, or if that's not true now, it will be in the next few years. So these problems of livability and congestion and things are just going to get worse. So all of these things are coming together to really force some of this change, but none of this could happen unless you had more innovation possible out there. And in a very real way, what is making this possible is the ability to move around and get and exchange information in a more efficient way, in a more significant way, in greater volumes. And our business model is a great example of one that really is enabled by this whole revolution. Zipcar is a child of the information economy in a very real way. So, really quickly, just if you're not familiar with Zipcar, it'll make a lot more sense if I walk you through what we are. Let's go back one. So we are car sharing, and there's an actual industry now that's grown up around this category. And if you don't know, what it is really, as we like to say, car ownership 1 hour at a time. And essentially, what what it is, a lot of people think, oh, it's just sort of car rental, but it's fundamentally different in a couple of ways. One is that, the primary one is that it's really about being in your local neighborhood, outside of your business, outside of where you live. And it's not about really travel, although it can be about that as well. So, and it's also about self-service, and this is, obviously very relevant to why we're here today. You join, you get a membership card, that's an RFID card, and then you have access to our fleet, which in DC now is about 900 cars parked around the area in Bethesda and Northern Virginia as well. And it's all self-service from there. You go on our website, you go on your iPhone, you go on any other mobile phone. You can find where our cars are, you can reserve them. At the point in time you show up, you scan in using your Zipcar, and you drive, and then you return it back to the same space. And so, simple as that. You don't go into an office and sign a bunch of papers. And for obvious reasons, this is enabled entirely by the ability to do this in a self-service kind of remote way. Just to give you a sense of where this has gotten to now, we're now in 14 major cities, mostly in the US, but we're in Toronto and Vancouver and Canada, and then we're in London as well. We have going on 200 university partnerships. You can imagine how this would be an attractive model for university campuses with students. For us, it's great as well because it gets that zip card in people's hands before they move to the cities after they graduate. We've got over 400,000 Zipcar members, going on about 8,000 Zipcars, and very significantly for us over the next couple of years, even in our current footprint, we have about 15 million people now within a 10-minute walk of a Zipcar. Who are the customers? Government and business are using this as fleet replacement. Universities, I already mentioned. Consumers are the lion's share. And if you look at who our members are, it's really not surprising, I guess, when you think about it. It's 84%, well, just, you can see the numbers. Educated, skew younger, although that's starting to change a little bit as we're getting bigger. Able to spend, very loyal and active. I mean, the very interesting thing to me is that this is again, enabled by mobile technology. This is a mobile community, really, is what it is. We are amazed at how much our members talk to us. We talk to our members all the time. We have happy hours. They all show up there. It's really, it's the whole secret of the brand and the services. It's something that they want to be a part of. And that is very much fostered by the back and forth that we have with them on a day-to-day basis. And so, and also certainly they're tech savvy, they're early adopter, technology adopters, enormous smartphone penetration in our user base, and we have and will take a lot more advantage of that as we go. I don't want to go through this very much, except to say that the technology obviously is what makes all this go. We're a very data-intensive business. This cannot work unless you're very efficient about how you move this fleet around and how you maintain cars. And so on the sort of technology management side, that's very significant for us. More and more we will be looking at ways to, as car makers, innovate in terms of what the technology is in the cars. We will be working with them and trying to plug into that. But the smartphone and mobile broadband is very democratizing in this for us, in the sense that we're not dependent really on the car makers. We can look outside of that to people's personal devices and use that as a way to communicate. So that's very important for us. The best example of this for us now, and so you have the technology side for us, and then you have the application side for our members, and we've barely started to scratch the surface of how we can take advantage of new technologies and networks to communicate and provide better services to our members. You've heard people talk about real-time traffic reports and things like that. Just scratching the surface for us, really. The one example I'll walk you through, and then I'll leave you alone, is the iPhone app that we launched last year. We have an application that if you're, I think that maybe San Francisco there, that's an example, where if you're standing on the streets of San Francisco, you want to use a car in a half an hour, you can pull up our iPhone application. It'll show you all the Zipcar locations near you. Pick the location you want. You'll see all the cars at that location. We tend to have pods of 2 to 6 cars. You'll see what cars are available. You'll be able to click on that car, get some information about it, reserve it, and then at the appointed time, you can go to that car. If it's in a big parking lot, you can use the iPhone application to honk the horn through our network, so it'll show you immediately where the car is. And then you can use, instead of your zip card, you can use your iPhone as the key fob, essentially, to open the car. And then we have the keys in the car once you're in it. So And the reaction we've gotten from this is amazing. I'll just give you a couple of numbers. We're up around 7,000 horn honks per month now for people trying to find cars or just wanting to see if it works or not. And 7% of all Zipcar reservations and 20% of all reservation extensions are now done by mobile, and most of that through the iPhone. So, and when I'm saying reservation extensions, I mean, you're driving around, you realize you need another hour, so you just text us or go through the iPhone application, and you're done, and you can keep it for an hour, another hour or two. So again, this is really just scratching the surface. But it's a great example of we are not in the broadband business. We don't want to be in the broadband business. We don't want to be in the devices business. As much the more the rest of that industry does well and produces tools for us, the better it is, and for our members, the better it is for us. This is step one, and it's just a great example of one of the industries. Zipcar is an example, but the whole shared asset kind of idea, where management is such an important thing and communication with users is such an important thing that there's a lot more to come.
Thanks, John. One quick question for you before we move on. You said about 7% of your reservations are done through the apps. How long has Zipcar been using the apps? What is the rate of growth that you see there?
It's been faster than we thought. I mean, we launched this at the Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference last year. So it's been about 12 months actually.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great. Moving on, Ed. I think we'll get the next.
Okay, I'm Ed Gray, and can you hear me all? Okay. As indicated by the senator there, energy is a field for broadband. So just a couple of things on here. We're the world's largest metering company, and we've been around 175 years, but of course in a high-tech business that doesn't mean anything. It's what have you done for me lately? So we introduced the first RF mesh technology commercially in 2003. There's about 4 million meters of those out there. Besides talking to the electric meters, it also talks to gas and water meters, the same communication system. So anyway, direct WAN is what I'll talk about. We introduced a product last year where the cellular phone is directly into the meter or whatever other distribution automation device you want to talk about. And the last bullet on there are meters are engineered, designed, constructed, manufactured, everything in the United States, and most of these aren't that are deployed. Okay, what's the smart grid? This is the 10-second version, which is probably more understandable to this group than a lot of others I talk to. Basically, you have a digital sensing, computation, communications, reporting, and control network that is overlaid on the old-fashioned, Edison and Westinghouse analog power system. Why would you want to do that? Really two reasons. One is you want to make the assets be used more effectively, which of course is why you digitize and communicate all industrial systems, same reason. In addition, you want energy retail prices to be closer to the wholesale cost, which it typically is not by a long shot in electricity. So this is building here. I thought it would just come up like it is. But anyway, the point of this is for metering applications, we have to have very inexpensive communication applications because there's hundreds of millions of meters in the United States alone. So obviously, if we had an expensive communication system, that wouldn't work very well. So one of the ways to add value is to take that same communication system and move up the wires towards the power plants. And so an area that's getting a lot of attention now is what's called distribution automation using communication systems. This is a kind of chart that's probably familiar to a lot of folks here, a number of clouds on it. In 2003, the architecture we introduced is the one on the bottom there with two clouds. The left-hand wide area network cloud is typically wireless broadband, and the right-hand side is 900 megahertz unlicensed radio, Part 15 of the FCC regulations. And last year we added an option which doesn't totally replace this, which has the wide area network going to all the endpoints. And for endpoints that require low latency and high bandwidth, such as distribution applications, that's a good thing to be doing. These are some of the places that we have applications around the world. About 1/3 of the 4 million meters we manufactured in North Carolina have been exported to other countries. Since a lot of you are communications experts, you'll realize a lot of these things aren't very easy to do from a wireless communications standpoint. We have New York City on the left, we have Alaska on the right, and they're the 900 megahertz wireless is going through 10 feet of snow. Now we have other hard to do things in the middle. On the left-hand side is, you see that building that looks like a needle? That's the world's tallest building. It's in Dubai, and our factory was working 24/7 to get all those meters out to them last quarter. So they're made in the USA. In the middle there, we have a number of distribution automation functions. Before I get to that on the next slide, on the right-hand side, there's actually a commercial industrial 480 volt three-phase motor that's, communicated with and controlled by our metering applications. So this is a tremendously valuable application because you can interrupt a lot of electrical load in a hurry, which electric utilities often have to do if something goes wrong in their system. A way to keep reliability is to dump a lot of load in a hurry, and that enables them to do that. So I hope this isn't too technical for folks. I was trying to show you real things as opposed to cloud diagrams. Anyway, this is an application which is very valuable, and this is in use partially, at least in Virginia, at Dominion Energy. The basic idea here is you operate the electric system at the lowest possible voltage you can and still operate equipment reliably. And as every electrical engineer knows, twinkle, twinkle, little star, power equals I squared R. The current's proportional to the voltage. So if you can reduce the voltage, you get a squared effect on how much power use you can reduce without hurting the load. And you have to do this without browning out. You have to know what the voltage is everywhere, which you can do with these systems. So anyway, these applications here, there's a power pole transformer and one that's a pad mount like the one in front of my house. And what we're saying here is you can run this either off our residential communication system or our commercial and industrial system, the alpha meter. As you can see, we can put interface cards in there, which enable you to operate it on the 900 megahertz mesh, and also cellular phone. So in summary here, obviously we have to be cutting edge in our technology or we'd be out of business in probably about 18 months. We have to design cost-effective systems based upon customer requirements, of course, since we have industrial products. But also we have to look at what's available in the way of communications, those diagrams people talked about, not only spectrum, but physical, where are things that we can use, like cell phone. And in those cases, like one of our customers is the Navajo Nation, there isn't very good cell phone coverage there. So we have to use dedicated utility spectrum in that particular case. So one of the things that I didn't show here, but certainly is true for anyone, is to do all these various products, you need numerous industrial partners, other companies, some of which are even your competitors in certain areas to make all this work. So that's basically what I had, and I'll have some contact information if you'd like to talk to me, and I'd be willing to take some questions.
Great. We'll take some questions in a few minutes after we do another couple of presentations. Next we'll have Lynn from Bank of America. Once we get your presentation lined up here.
Okay, thanks for inviting Bank of America to join the dialogue today. There's so many business models to talk about. The one specifically that I want to talk about that really mobile is fueling changes in like we've never seen before is the customer engagement model. The business model is really changing before our eyes, and just to kind of level set how different that is compared to other eras of customer engagement model change, I thought we could roll, I don't know if we have the quick 2-minute clip, but we'll roll this and just kind of level set, and for some of us this will just be our everyday life. I definitely can't voice over.
Almost had it.
So one of the things that I think that I love about this video is it reinforces the idea that what used to be the problem isn't anymore. So finding everybody and reaching them, that's getting increasingly easier. What do we do once we've connected, and how do we increasingly find ways to engage the customer where they are, and then use that as an opportunity, either to deepen an existing customer relationship or to acquire a new one as part of Bank of America's growth strategy, as an example, in most companies. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is how mobile is really driving an acceleration of not just that connect point and that availability, but also the opportunity to engage differently with customers and to really design experiences, two-way experiences with customers in unique ways. And in some of the examples, I think, that are showing up that the panel's sharing, they become evident, and I'm sure in your everyday life that's true too. And that's an important part of the discussion, because one of the things we're finding in any of the businesses we probably all represent here today is that when we get into the digital space, the thing that's different is that the customer's expectations are shaped by their holistic digital life, not by their financial services life or their Zipcar life or anything else. So pretty soon, what a customer expects to be true and available, readily available from their bank per se, is shaped by what they encounter every day. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because adoption, I think, I guess I'm the driver here. Okay. So adoption is really being fueled by choice. There's plenty of choices out there for customers, and I want to talk just a little bit about how the more complex engagement model, which I think this slide illustrates, how it's an opportunity for sure, and how it's also a challenge, a challenge that we're addressing at Bank of America by really listening to our customers like never before. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We're not just available through a lot of different mediums to listen to customers, but we actually engage with our customers in our usability labs, and maybe some of you that are customers or prospects at Bank of America have participated. I know Vicki and some others I talked with earlier this morning are customers and have experienced this, and thank you, and thanks for your business. And so an example of that is we actually bring customers and prospects into our usability labs. Our mobile capabilities, existing mobile capabilities and future emerging capabilities are present in our labs, and we engage with our customers side by side and then in focus groups and actually share with them different capabilities for banking that we're designing for them. And then we get their feedback and incorporate that into our designs. And so that's happened, that's an example of many. And I think what this slide illustrates in terms of the engagement model is, if I go all the way back, say 30 years when I first got into the financial services industry and really in a community banking way, you know, it was so simple, but the reach wasn't there. And so now when we look at our Twitter agents engaging with customers every day, when we look at our chat agents that are engaging with our online banking customers when somebody gets stuck and wants to engage in a chat for help, when we look at those customers that haven't really walked into a banking center in years, they use the image deposits at the ATM, or they use a mobile, you know, downloadable app and so on. How do we engage with them differently? And as we're designing all of these experiences, the challenge becomes, how do we do that across all of these different channels and reach points in a way that makes sense for the customer, so that we can weave a seamless and well-integrated experience together. Increasingly, what customers tell us, and I think this transcends most businesses, customers tell us that in the digital space, they expect certain things from their experience. There are certain attributes that are non-negotiable. They expect a safe and a secure experience. They expect something that's fair and transparent, clear and straightforward, something that's simple and seamless, and that's where the seamlessness comes into weaving something across all these channels. And then they expect something that's accurate and relevant as in know me, know who I am, and then respond accordingly. And you know, that just sounds so intuitive and so easy, and frankly, it's not. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is this movement to the digital space, and even though this has been a journey, and all of us have really been involved in this journey, what's different is the customers' preferences and behaviors are changing, and that's fueling adoption at a rate that we've never seen. And I think the video illustrated that, but I think when you start seeing adoption happening before your eyes, kind of in the monthly and daily basis, it really is a call to action. So preferences and behaviors are changing. For Bank of America, one thing that's been really interesting and probably just isn't a commonly understood maybe statistic even for some of us, is that increasingly our interactions with our customers are in the digital space. The vast majority of our interactions are in the digital space. And if you think about ATM, mobile, both downloadable apps and text banking and so on, online banking, web, social networks, that interaction set with our customers represents more than 70% of our interactions. So while the legacy of those interactions was really in the service and self-service model, what we're increasingly finding is the expectations our customers have, they're really bigger than that. And so how do we start designing for that? And here I've just sort of shared some of the key points about the movement to the digital space. So there are a lot of important channels or engagement channels that make up the total set. And I'm just going to talk very briefly about a couple of these and focus on mobile. So, you know, the web and online banking, often I'll chat with people and they'll say, yeah, there's nothing new there. I mean, this has been around for a while. I think what's new is it continues to be a richer and richer experience, and we're accountable for making it that way with our customers. So now, you know, as compared to maybe before, you can aggregate accounts from all over your relationships. You can plan and budget. You can invest. You can have a complete aggregation view of all of your accounts and retirement planning, interactive retirement planning online. You can chat with someone while you're building that retirement plan. So the experience is richer, although online banking is certainly probably the legacy channel there in the digital space. I spoke about the ATMs, and one thing I wanted to point out here is when we think about, by the end of this year, 40% of all of Bank of America's customer deposits will actually occur through the ATM. Just a couple years ago, that number was 20%. And if we think about where that's going and the extension of mobile, as we think about remote deposit capture with phone camera capture of deposits and such, which exists in some places, not widely adopted yet and so on, but you can easily see the jump from some of our customers being very comfortable with ATM image deposit and then migrating and adopting on the mobile side. In social spaces, we have Twitter agents and Facebook agents and chat agents, and maybe some of you have experienced their listening and their sharing and their assisting, and those are our strategies around social networks at this point. We understand they're relevant, and they will be increasingly relevant, and right now we're really learning from our customers in the social spaces area. So that brings us to mobile, an increasingly important part of the equation. And again, I'm not going to go through those statistics, but it's interesting to think about how all of this integrates in new ways, because for the first time, and kind of what's different about mobile, I think, is for the first time, we're going everywhere the customer's going, and we're going with them. So we're the bank in their pocket, and actually I got that from a customer. So that's what's different. That changes the game. So while these statistics are interesting, and I'll just use the alerts example that exists here. So we have 50 unique alert choices. As we increasingly know our customers and understand their preferences and behaviors and really engage them as a segment of one, we're able then to leverage these capabilities to engage them in new and useful and relevant ways. So example, you're out shopping and you're about to make a purchase and you get an alert, and you see that there is an alert from the bank saying that there's a fraudulent activity suspect alert coming across, and there's an opportunity for the customer engage through appropriate safety devices, secure devices, to say, it's me, so let me go ahead and make this purchase. That avoids the interruption with the merchant, that avoids the call that nobody wants to have to make, and that avoids the transfer when that call comes in, and that avoids. And so it's easy to take just one example like that, an actionable two-way alert right there with the bank in your pocket, and turn that into something that is even downstream of a different customer engagement model, because obviously the financial model that supports that new business model is emerging as well. And so I just want to touch real quick on some of these, if I didn't already. The first two statements here, I think, really they really say it all, that the customer now can engage with us wherever they go, whenever they choose. But now what is also different is we're able to reach out to the customer in really relevant ways. And we can make a difference, we can add value, we can access new markets and new customers as an extension of our physical presence, which is really important for growing the business.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Her presentation reminds me of what Alec Ross at the State Department uses a lot of times as an example of what is really driving technological adoption in developing worlds is mobile banking. And he uses a story a lot of times about getting off a plane in the Congo and how everyone has their cell phones, and that's how they pay for taxis, that's how they pay for things they buy at the market, and how fast it's growing in developing countries. So hopefully we can get into some of that and some of the questions. Okay, great. Last but not least, our last presentation is Kent Dix of MedApps.
Thank you, and they gave me the option of standing up, so I am going to stand up to do this because I've been sitting too long on it. So, my name is Kent Dix, I'm founder and CEO of MedApps. MedApps is a healthcare IT company which Senator Warner talked about, using mobile M2M technology to be able to connect patients that are in remote locations to their healthcare providers. So you've seen all the work that's being done around electronic health records and the meaningful use that's out there. We want to go through and now get the data, the accurate data into those electronic health records. And we're going to use mobile technology to do that. So just a couple quick statistics that 133 million people in the United States, almost 45% of us, have one or more chronic diseases, and it's getting worse, about 10% per year. With that, that gives us a marketplace of about 60 million people in the U.S. that would benefit from some form of remote patient monitoring. The whole objective of what we're trying to do here is to try to reduce healthcare costs, to try to keep patients out of the hospital, out of the emergency rooms. We're seeing that the statistics are showing that $300 million is being spent in home remote patient monitoring today. 2009. In 2014, it's expected to go to $4.4 billion, and that's explosive growth over the next 4 to 5 years. And in the world, it's estimated that there'd be $175 million to $250 million savings, $175 billion savings from using remote patient monitoring. The one thing I want to point out is that a lot of people don't know the statistics, but 5% of the population, especially in the US, consume 50% of the healthcare costs. And if you go up to 10 to 20%, they're consuming up to 80% of the healthcare costs. So I'm a big proponent that one solution doesn't fit all. We look at the marketplace and we divide it into people that would use M2M technology, dedicated technology, and people that would use their own smartphones to be able to nudge them to try to keep them healthy and out of the hospital. And as Senator Warner also said too, there's a big problem with healthcare in rural areas. I just testified in front of the subcommittee for Veterans Affairs on getting wireless health technology to our veterans in rural locations. It's a big problem. Part of the problem is that if you have a person that is within 3 to 4 hours away from a doctor, they're not going to run to the doctor when they have a symptom. They're going to sit there and let the disease exacerbate to a point. And the next time you see them is going to be in the emergency room or in the hospital. We have found that by putting a simple way of connecting patients together and holding them accountable to their caregivers, that they're more likely to stay compliant with the routines the doctors give them, and they're more likely to stay out of the hospital. So just a couple other statistics. I want to not take up your time here, but right now we see home patient monitoring going to about 25% in the next 5 years. We see that also that there's 1 million units or 1 million devices like this Health Pal out here that are using M2M technology currently today, and it's going to grow to over 3.6 million by 2018. And just to show you the Health Pal, I've got to be careful what I do with this. So, just to show you, this is a pulse oximeter that is used for SpO2 and heart rate. A doctor may give it to you and say, I want you to do that on a regular basis and let me know what your numbers are. Typically, an elderly person would have to go through, or a normal person would have to go through and write down what the readings are. Sorry, it went off, actually. Right in the middle of my demonstration. Has that ever happened before? Anyway, they'll go through and ask what the SpO2 is and what the heart rate is, and right now mine's at 95 for some reason. And they'll go through it, and then you normally have to write it down. When you write it down, now it goes over to these devices. It went over their Bluetooth automatically. We can step on a scale, we can step on do a blood pressure device, we can do glucose. They'll go into this device, and if they leave it alone for a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, they'll automatically upload it to the cloud into the electronic health record so a doctor can see it within minutes. So our ultimate goal here, like I talked before, is to shift left, is to try to keep that patient at home and try to keep them compliant and try to reduce healthcare costs and keep them out of the emergency room. There's going to be multiple ways we're going to be able to do that. One of the things that we're seeing is very important is the exam room of the future is going to be wherever the patient's at. And you're already starting to see this transformation. I think that government's very, very complicated in some ways, but I'm starting to see the shift in both industry and government starting to occur, so we can see this start to occur out there. If you notice that the Take Care clinics are already starting to go into the Walgreens, and the Minute clinics are already starting to go into the CVS's that are out there. It's getting closer to where the patients are at. We're now, one of our biggest populations we're working with is truck drivers. Truck drivers, the big companies like J.B. Hunt are concerned about their truckers. They're self-employed, and they've got diabetes and hypertension. Well, guess what the next step is? Moving the clinics into the truck stops as well. David Jesse, who's one of our truck drivers right here, is with a Cleveland Clinic program. He used to have to go back every 2 months or so to get monitored from his doctor, taking in these logbooks of data that's 60 to 90 days old, and the doctor would say, let me make a decision on something that happened 60 days ago. Now he can make a decision on stuff that happened 2 days ago. And then the patient can stop by a pharmacy along the way, pick up his medication, and change his routine. The benefit of remote patient monitoring is to reduce the need for office visits, to enable fewer physicians to provide health care. I mean, we're getting less and less health care people out there. We're getting sicker as a society. We're going through the baby boomer generation. We've got to be very, very smart about how we manage and work with people. And it really is ridiculous to sit here and think about nowadays. You know, I actually am not a Star Trek fan, but I saw a movie a couple of years ago that says, oh my God, I can't believe we're still operating and cutting people open. It's almost to the fact that you're going, oh my God, I can't believe we still make people go to a doctor's office to be able to be monitored. And that's kind of where we're getting to right now as well. We've got to be able to allow patients to be monitored from a distance. And part of that is us working in the Washington area, working with the FDA and working with CMS and working with the FCC to make sure that whole ecosystem comes together. So we talk about reimbursement, and we talk about releasing spectrum, and we talk about you know, trying to get devices through the FDA in a timely manner as well. So this is a little thing that kind of came to me a couple weeks ago. It's a symbol for the Zen, the connected world, but you know, we've been all kind of using technology along the way, from PCs, and you had to go to home or office to be able to use your PC, or if you're driving along, you have an emergency, you have to stop and use the call box, or if you wanted to go to the library, read a book, you had to go to the library. If you wanted a security, you may have a physical guard standing there, or if you want to get your blood pressure monitored, you go to the doctor. Well, we're already starting to make this change. Wireless iPad, OnStar, the Kindle model, wireless ADT security. Now, this lady that's able to monitor herself from home. It's all part of the ecosystem that we're moving to. And why should she have to go to her doctor's office to be monitored? And why should the doctor have to see her physically in the office to be compensated and paid for it as well? This is one of the things that's going to help us change in healthcare. So one of the things we're doing is we want to talk to just common off-the-shelf devices, stuff you find at CVS and Target and Walgreens and stuff, and to be able to send that data that you're using back into your electronic health record wherever you want it to go. So we want to be that conduit in between, just like we did here, and that's uploading to the server right now, just like we did here, to be able to send that data up into my electronic health record without the user touching anything. No buttons, hands off. I don't want, you know, grandma to be intimidated by the technology. And I'll show you that we consider this part as being, we want the technology to be invisible and transparent in the background. We look at situations where people are diabetic and use it for glucose monitoring, or hypertension, or congestive heart failure. Going into our back-end system, and I don't know if you've heard of Microsoft Health Vault, is a personal health portal that allows a patient to log in and see their data. And then trying to also deliver multiple sets of technology that has M2M technology inside of it. This small M2M technology, small chipset that I'm not going after the 4G marketplace or LTE marketplace. I'm going after the 2G marketplace, the low traffic. I'm going to be sending 100 bytes of data at a time. I don't need to put it on an iPhone that has a $40 rate plan. I can put it on an M2M solution out here that has a much significantly less costly rate plan. So it's better to adopt as well. So we want to be able to create multiple devices that make this adoptive. We wanted to be flexible and simple as well. When we did recent studies, we found it is like the Kindle model of healthcare, where it can be delivered to the patient and set up within 10 to 15 minutes, because it comes already with the telecom side of this. We did a study with Microsoft in Cleveland Clinic, and they gave the patient a USB blood pressure device and said, here, go ahead and connect it to your own PC. But guess what? That 10% I talked about that consumed 80% of the healthcare resources didn't have broadband connectivity, and didn't have a PC, and didn't have a PC that was up to date either. So we can only get to about 20% of the population, where we can get to 100% of the population. And then we want to base this on our cloud model. We call it cloud care. It's where healthcare meets the cloud. We want to be able to, if you're distributing, I call it plastic, out into the marketplace like this, who's going to take care of it? Is grandma going to take care of it? And the answer is probably not. So we need to be able to be connected to this device all the time, the health of this device, to make sure that we can send new software updates, to add new equipment to it, to be able to talk in multiple languages as well and remotely serve that population. And that's what we just talked about a little bit about the cloud part. One of the things that we really see in this technology is, and this is a play on words, but we bring accountability and transparency into healthcare. Transparency meaning that this device sits in the background and just monitors whatever you've been asked to do, step on the scale or blood pressure or whatever else. Accountability, I mean, this is one of the biggest things I talk about, is we consider this about 20% technology and about 80% psychology. You don't have to overthink this at all. With my mother-in-law, if I gave her this device, she'd say, no way am I gonna use this. But if I gave this device and said, it's a contract for you to be able to stay in your home instead of us moving you into our house or into assisted living, and by the way, you're gonna be connected to my wife, right, with it, she's probably gonna use it. And we set up this veil of accountability that she knows she's looking for this reading to come in. Because she's accountable to this. She's more likely to take her readings, she's more likely to take her medication, and she's more likely to stay out of the hospital. So folks, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be fairly simple, and we can start saving some fairly large bucks today in healthcare by implementing these type of devices. And then as the value proposition, what we're looking at is to reduce unnecessary hospitalizations. One of the biggest problems I see in healthcare, and that the accountable care organizations see and the disease management companies see that are responsible, 100% responsible for the cost of a patient, is that they see a patient being transported with an ambulance to the hospital and then stay in the hospital for one day and then released. It's a big expense to do that. I've got a major ambulance company coming to me now and saying, why do we even have to transport them to the hospital? Why can't we stabilize them with technology like this at home? Have them transition to a wireless call center, even keep a person with them. It's cheaper than going to the emergency room. We've got to think of ways to be able to make this work. Battery dead? Anyway. Yeah? Yeah, there's more, but that's okay. Anyway, I'm about done anyway. But there's something else? That's okay, not a problem. It probably froze up. But anyway, I'm about at the end of my time anyway. But what we're trying to do is ultimately trying to reduce the cost. We want to align to off-the-shelf devices. I think that one of the slides that was later is who's the person that would pay for this device. I don't see consumers paying for this, in ubiquity right now because there's not that trade-off back and forth for incentives for them to be able to do that. Healthcare is seen as somewhat of an entitlement right now, and not a, I won't get into the political side of it. Thank you. But the people that would actually pay for it are the payers, the providers, the home health care organizations. Believe it or not, the people that are financially responsible for the patients, so believe it or not, the large self-insured employers, AT&T, the Verizons, the Chevys, the Fords, are looking at this to try to look at the top 10% of their employees and see how they can go through and keep them compliant out of the hospital. One statistic, and I don't think they mind sharing it, is that AT&T alone, which is one of our partners, is responsible for 1.2 million employees, 400,000 current employees, 800,000 retirees. They spend $5.5 billion a year just on healthcare, and seeing that only go up by $500 million a year, 10% a year. So in order to be profitable, it's an unsustainable cost. So you've got to be able to go through and try to identify that and work with that population to try to keep that cost down as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll kick off the Q&A session with a quick question for the panel, and then we'll move on to the audience. We have about 15 minutes or so before a break. So each of you in your presentations touched on how important data is to all of your businesses and in making these products work or these services work. My question is, what is the biggest hurdle that you see in the future, or even right now, in terms of keeping up with the burgeoning amount of data that you're each dealing with and making sure that customers are comfortable with making that data available, especially in the banking and healthcare space where that information is more sensitive than in other industries?
Well, I'll kick it off, and that's an excellent question, and top of mind for most consumers, and certainly important to us at Bank of America. I think often what we talk about is the fact that we have more data and information than anyone deserves, probably. What we haven't necessarily done yet in working with our customers is to really translate that into really informative, analytical information that, you know, is actionable for us. We can use to deliver more value to the customer. And in doing that, what we have to be able to do is partner with our customer to understand, again, what their expectations are, what their preferences are, so that some of the points you're making around what's the shared expectation around privacy, what's the shared expectation around how the information's used. That's something that we have a chance to talk with our customers about a lot, and certainly most customers have a formed opinion around that, which is great, and one that they often share with us. So I think one of our immediate challenges is to really leverage the information we have, learn from it, and really partner with our customers and engage them in determining how to use the information in an appropriate way.
Anyone else?
Is this on? Actually, as you can imagine, in healthcare, I mean, data is extremely important, from the HIPAA regulations to everything else that's out there as well. We try to go through and work with the electronic health records to make sure that that data is actually in the cloud, is actually locked behind a firewall, and that there's very little information out in front where somebody can get access to. But the real thing that we really don't want to do here is what I say in this town is I don't want to create the CIA effect. I don't want to go through and put all this technology in place, and then all of a sudden I get rid of the operatives in the field, and then you've got more data out there than you can deal with, and then everything's ineffective. So what we try to do, and we hope that we've learned, the healthcare, when I say we, the healthcare industry has learned from this, HIT industry has learned from this, is that we need to have heuristic systems that are cleaning the data, bringing the data in, still have those operatives in the field as doctors and nurses, but giving them more intelligent data to work off of, to be able to identify a problem early on.
John?
Yeah, we're sort of all about mobility and location, and some of the value-added services we may end up implementing are all about knowing where someone is potentially. But just to let you know how carefully we want to approach this, we have GPS capability in the box that we put in the car, but we don't turn it on for our general consumer service. We don't. At this point, we don't want to know. We just don't want to know where you are. Our members don't want us to know, be tracking them. You know, a little bit different when you're talking about a corporate setting and you're helping somebody manage a fleet, and you know they may want to know who's scanning in and out of the car and when and where they're going, and you could even potentially geofence. But you know, we are going to be faced with this dilemma where we can potentially provide what we would consider serious value-added services, like, you know, tell us where you're going and we'll tell you where to park. We'll tell you where there's an open space, or you know, here's a coupon for X store that you're going by because you've told us you're going to Y location. And we think that there will be an appetite for that, but only if it's very much about value add to the customer. The minute they think you're being sneaky about it, you know, or where you're sort of saying, oh, you know, give us this information, and then a pop-up, you know, appears magically that's relevant to something they've told you. We just want to stay far away from that. It's going to be much more about being very deliberate about sort of the next set of value-added services relevant to mobility for us as one example.
Great.
In the energy field, there's a lot of sensitivity around who owns the data, whose data is it, that kind of thing. And this is all evolving right now. Congress is involved, the states are involved, so the jury is still out. One of our largest customers is Toronto Hydro, and they have a web bot, you know, which they use on their help. You know, they have you can get on the web, you can get on the Toronto Hydro site, and they have a little anime figure there, a woman, Anita, that talks to you. And this is like the third version of that they've had, because they found their customers, the customers of the electric company, did not want somebody that looked like a utility employee in their homes interfacing with them. So privacy of data, how it's handled, the customer experience is important. Another area in energy is all the devices have to be designed with lots of margin for future data needs in them. So the typical benchmark which we use, and it's become an industry standard, is our products are only using 10% of their capability, and our networks 10% of their capability when they're installed in the field for all those new applications that may come later.
Great, very interesting. Yeah, we'll open it up for questions, and remember there are microphones. First, hand I saw.
Thank you very much. I'm Mike Tuttleman with SRA International. Speaking of data and this whole need to analyze it better. Also, can you speak to a question about workforce development and training and the kinds of people that are being trained and educated to handle that kind of data? And so I have kind of two questions. One, are you guys collectively seeing sort of challenges to getting the kind of skilled workers you need to effectively manage all these new kinds of applications? And actually, that would be kind of the main one. But interestingly, like Bank of America, what kind of organizational changes are you seeing within your own company, given this really rapid transformation from quote more traditional functions? And how are your workers dealing with this? I know we did development work in, say, Romania on tax automation. The biggest challenge, not the technology, was people's resistance to job loss being automated out. So just kind of interested in those set of questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just comment on two parts. The second thing you said about the fear of being replaced or displaced as automation and these capabilities become more mature. You know, this has been a really interesting journey, and I'm going to use the ATM image deposit as an example. The place where all of those deposits were originally occurring was obviously inside the branch, inside the banking center. And the fact that we've moved from 20 to 40% and growing of the deposits now occurring at the ATM, a huge part of that transformation was associate engagement. So the transparency up front with the associate to say, we are going to introduce these capabilities for our customers. Here's what we expect the result of that to be. We expect you to participate in that. So we actually engage the people in the banking centers to say, one of your jobs is in fact to help that customer learn how to take advantage of that capability. One of the things that we learned from that experience, we gather a lot of VOA, a lot of voice of associate as part of our just ongoing management routines. And so we have a pulse on that often. And one of the things we learned through that experience was that the fact that we engage them up like anything, the fact that we engage them up front in the business model change and help them understand the rationale and frankly help them process why they shouldn't regard that as a threat. Something as simple as educating them on what the turnover rates are in our branches and the fact that over a 2-year journey of transaction migration, anyone who's performing well isn't going to be affected. So it's really a different associate engagement model. To your earlier point though, which is a great one about how do we engage associates to protect the most important asset, our customer and our customer's information and their financial information. That's a part of everything we do in terms of associate engagement from the time, from recruiting, through onboarding, through required training and certifications and so on, and then obviously ongoing monitoring and auditing. And it's something that we take very seriously, and I think most people have that expectation. I think each of us does as a consumer, and we're able to talk about that with associates. They are consumers. They want their information protected, so they understand and respect that that's just a non-negotiable. It has to be there.
You know, we have sort of a good news, bad news thing there in the utility industry. Most of the people, it was sort of like Senator Warner said, you know, people don't go into engineering anymore. So in this country at least. So consequently, the fact that we've automated all this and we put a lot of the intelligence in the computers is actually a positive thing in many ways. Now our utility customers take their electrical workers who are meter readers, and then they try to fleet them up to more valuable jobs rather than getting rid of them. And of course, with the retirement going on throughout the electricity industry, it probably in the long run, I think it's a good thing that we are putting more capability in the machinery.
And you can imagine in our industry, it's a new industry somewhat. I mean, healthcare's been out there for decades, but we're right now crossing the chasm in it. And part of that is, trying to evaluate how it's going to work within an organization. I think we're getting through the ROIs, that it's a great ROI with the organization, but trying to take these health care organizations that are used to, they're busy anyway, they're used to their reimbursement structure they've already got in place, and trying to go through and realign resources to try to pay for it a different way and get it done a different way is extremely painful. One of the things that it's interesting, somebody actually from Motorola told me this, and it makes a lot of sense. They acquired symbol technology, the barcoding technology, and 10 years ago, they would walk in the hospital and say, here's a barcoding system and it's going to revolutionize the hospital, and they'll say, great, that's wonderful, it's going to revolutionize it. But nothing was barcoded. Not prescriptions, not patients' records, nothing was. Now, take it 10 years later, and you can't live in a hospital system without a barcoder, right? So the same thing's going to happen with this type of technology as well. And part of that is realigning the workforce and realigning the processes that go on in the hospital.
We have time for a couple more questions if there are any from the audience. Yes, right here.
A question for John and Ed. John, do you use sensors to monitor the health of your cars when they're out in the field? And Ed, how do smart meters help with the deployment of electric vehicles? Where's the role there?
Yeah, we do. Actually, currently it's a pretty simple interface that we use with the current generation of vehicles. Some very basic stuff that we pull off the car, but more and more, it will be important to our business model to do more, and cars will be able to do more. There will be questions with the automakers about what they're going to make available. You're seeing some of that even with repair shops now, about what sort of data feeds they're going to make available. But there could be enormous efficiency gains for us in how we organize and do regular maintenance and monitor the cars and do take care of preventative issues. Our model only works if it's really convenient for you as a member, and you're not having to take care of the problems you have to take care of when you own a car. And so it's going to be very important for us to do more of that, and that's sort of as we look at the next generation. It'll require development on our side, but also more and more on the vehicle manufacturer side to really make it work. But it will be a very important piece of what we do.
Yeah, electric vehicles from a energy independence point of view is sort of another one of those holy grail things, at least it's being looked at that way. If we could power the vehicles from electricity rather than Middle East oil, that would certainly help our balance of trade and probably a few other political things. With regard to the metering area, a lot of it has to do with how the standards are set, sort of again like Senator Warner was talking about. We have a charging station in Canada, one of our customers, Burlington Hydro, which has entirely our metering running the system. The kind of model that is being pushed currently, you might have read about this, a good example is the Nissan Leaf, where basically a charging station would be installed in your house, a pretty expensive one, in order to power the electric-only vehicle. So I think a lot of what has to happen in electric vehicles to make it work properly is to get the standards set, and then we can deploy these. There's basically three kinds of charging. One is plugging it into 115 volts. One is like a dryer plug, and the other is twice that voltage, would be like a charging station that might be at your employer in a parking lot, wherever. But there's a lot of development that has to take place for standards to make it work properly, seamlessly.
One more question? Oh, sorry, right here.
Yes, hi. So a lot of you have talked about either the evolving business models, or some of you have new business models. What do you see as the biggest challenge, and I think Ted alluded to it, there's a whole new ecosystem in terms of the things that have to come together with these new business models. What do you see as the biggest challenges in putting that whole ecosystem together and the integration of all these new technologies over the next 10 years?
Mine actually is going to be in the industry when I talk about it. It's going to be actually centered here, in Washington. It's getting the organizations put together, the alphabets out there, the FCC, the FDA, the CMSs that are out, HHSs, to try to figure out what is the goal, what game, what playing field are we on, and to align to the right playing field. Now, you've seen some very positive things come out over the last couple of years. I don't want to get political here, but we've forced in healthcare reform. We've got the ARA stimulus funds that are out there and helping with in the National Broadband Plan and the High-Tech Act, and a bunch of stuff that's going to help in trying to influence new technology to help with the problem. It's not just a hospital system problem. It's just not a process problem. It's a technology problem. It's a data problem. There's a lot of alignment. It's a very, very large problem to try to change. So it's going to take every bit of that 10 years, to try to get some of these changes put in place. One of the biggest things we're seeing is the self-insured, the large employers out there that are starting to put incentives out for their employees that are more healthy, that aren't costing them as much. out there. You're going to see VIP programs that are coming up for reward program, bonus programs. You're seeing programs that are coming up and offering better co-pays and insurance, for people that are take an active role in their own health and try to keep themselves compliant. I think you're going to see more of a transition. I don't want to get political on this, but I think you're going to see more of a transition of the responsibility of healthcare going back to the individual themselves more than somebody else, and that's going to take a while to do.
The other thing I'd add, I think it's a great question, because part of it I think is there are things externally, all great points, that to some degree are outside of our control, we can influence. And then there is a huge list of things just internally for all of us to deal with, especially in a lot of these legacy businesses, that it truly requires complete transformation and a level of investment where with this dynamic landscape, I think a lot of it is really determining where are you going to place your bets and where are you going to invest, and things are rapidly evolving. So keeping a close watch on where to invest and when, and determining where the customer is going, I think is going to be more important than ever. But for sure, the external and internal landscape, I think is probably an unprecedented period relative to understanding that change and planning for it.
And I saw one more question back here I wanted to make sure we got to, so yeah.
Well, it's a little bit of a lead off the last question, which is I'd be interested in knowing, as you launch your business models and as you continue to evolve your business models, who do you learn from? Who do you benchmark to that you believe can give you the capacity to differentiate yourself in an innovative way in the mobile space either one?
If I didn't say my customers, I'd get a black point against me, right? So, I mean, obviously it is my customers that we're learning from, and we're evolving with customers right now and doing a lot of ROI and a lot of testing. We're a small company, compared to Bank of America. You have to do it differently than I do, but it's the same roots. But we want to learn, and we want to build a better mousetrap out there for our customers. I'm a true believer that if you build it, they won't come. They won't necessarily come. Then a lot of technicians will build it out there. You have to actually give it to grandma, give it to the neighbors, give it to me. I still have a blinking 12 on my VCR at home. I don't want to change it, right? You got to make it easy and simple and adaptable. So if you don't change your model and listen to your customers, you're not going to be successful.
I'm just going to echo that basically. I mean, there is so much potential noise in the system, and one of our big challenges is that we could look at what's proprietary, what's going to be open, what are the different kinds of technologies, what are the different sort of gradients of the different sorts of services that might be out there. So at the end of the day, it really is about keeping your eye for us, the member, the customer, as to what they're really wanting. I think a big challenge is going to be keeping it simple and not getting caught up in all the different things out there in technology for its own sake, because it is about the services you're providing. So I think we're sort of coming from the same direction. I think that's the only focus that will sort of keep you pointed right.
And the one thing I would add to that, I agree, our customers and our associates and prospect customers and associates are a key constituency for informing us. I think increasingly though, what we're learning is that aside from thinking more globally, which we must do, and key to that is understanding why some things do work in Asia and they won't work here. I think that's important. And then the third dimension, I think, really gets into all of us, citizens at large, wanting America to be innovative again. And I don't mean that kind of as a tagline, and nor do I mean it kind of in the way of like, let's be edgy and cool, but understanding, appreciating, and really valuing being innovative again in healthcare and in everything we do. And we were talking earlier, actually, outside this morning about that's a really touchy topic, as you talk about whether or not America is going to be innovative. And it's easy to point to examples, but considering it to be relevant, considering it to be an advantage, being valued for it again, I think that's something that we need to get back in that game.
I guess my answer would be it's somewhat different because we serve industrial customers, not end-use customers. But it's certainly the same in that it's our customers. What we basically do is like anybody that develops technology, we keep our eyes to the future, what chipsets are going to be out there, how powerful will the computers be, what software will be available. You know, there's a, getting through the gap sort of thing with all these technologies. And then what we do is we get our customers in and we say, these are the features we could develop by certain dates. We have roadmaps for that. And they say, well, that's real good, Elster, but we'd rather you did this one first rather than that one because it's more important to our customers. And so we try to accommodate their needs within the technologies we know that will be coming in the future.
Great, thank you everyone. Please join me in thanking our panelists for taking the time to